Video games, much like comic books, are so popular now that it's crazy to think that not too long ago they were very much taboo, you know, a niche market. I mean, you look at comics, most of the highest grossing movies are comic book movies, and that's where they got a lot of their fans. That's where it kind of boosted it up a bit. And it put these heroes into the limelight and got people interested in the source material. Video games are very much the same way. They evolved over the years and are so readily available now, like with phones and tablets and everything else. It's so easy to get into them. And you look at games like Fortnite, which has 200 million users, and it's incredible how big it is now. So I wanted to have a look at a game that's going to be turning 15 this year. And it's very much the king of its genre, and that game is World of Warcraft. So with the launch of World of Warcraft Classic coming soon, I thought it would be fun to reminisce and talk about early World of Warcraft, primarily Burning Crusade and Vanilla, leaning a little bit more on the Vanilla side, but I will be talking about both of them. Talking about the differences, because the game is very, very different to what it used to be. So let's have a look at early World of Warcraft.
I guess when like online gaming and that sort of stuff started, wasn't really that many games to play, right, on the computer. And the first would be like Habbo Hotel, where you kind of had all your friends playing at the same time online. And then that sort of turned into playing RuneScape, and then that eventually transferred into WoW.
So I didn't play World of Warcraft from the very start. I wasn't there for the launch. I had heard a lot about the game. I had played Warcraft 3. That was kind of my in with the lore and stuff. And a friend of mine, randomly one day, we said, hey, let's go down to the internet cafe. There was a small gaming-focused internet cafe by our school. So we went down there, and he bought me some time, gave me a free trial. He had one of those little free trial code things that you used to get with the booklets. And yeah, that was it. That was the start of it.
It was such a big game before it was even released. I think a lot of people had played it in beta, so it got a lot of hype. But I never even heard about it, and then when my friends started playing it, I was just like, nah, I'm not playing that. Screw that. I'm gonna play RuneScape. And then after watching them play, you sort of realize that, like, wow, this game was like nothing else there was at the time. Like, nothing even close, and still to this day, it's way better than a lot of other games, and still.
The thing that kept me hooked and what even dragged me in the first place was just the world, because I'd never played an MMO before. This was my first MMO. I know ones had come out prior. I think Lineage was one of them. So there was a few ones before this, but I think this was the one that sucked most people in and got them on board with MMOs. Especially for me anyway, just the world and how open everything was. And one of the first WoW moments for me was when I had to travel, and it was only a small thing at the time because it was all new, but it was when I had to travel from Darnassus, I think, to Kalimdor, and having to actually stand at the dock and wait for a boat to bring you to another area of the world was just incredible. Like, actually having to travel the distance yourself and everything, it was really, really cool. And just the zones were so different, and some of them were like just way too overpowered, so I was getting killed. So what happened was a friend of mine actually came out to get me, because he started a human, I started a night elf. So we were separated and we wanted to play together. And back then there was no easy teleports and stuff to get to people. So he had to actually travel to me and then escort me over to where he was. And in the long run, it actually kind of messed me up, because I was in a different area and I hadn't done all the tutorial quests and I was still not learning. And then he kind of just left me and I was just in the middle of the world not knowing what to do. I was in the middle of Stormwind, just not knowing what to do. And it was just so cool. It was a new moment, a new gaming moment for me, and that's one of the main things that dragged me in. Just seeing this open living world. And I was just a small part of it, and just seeing how big it was and the scale, it was incredible.
Yeah, I guess there's just no other game, like the gameplay and how like smooth the game engine was compared to other games at the time. Like compare RuneScape to WoW and like look at the graphic difference and like the interface and the controls and all that sort of stuff are just way more smooth. My first server was Manaroth, and I just played that because that's what my friends played on, and it was at Chicago server, I think, so right near where I live, so the ping was the lowest. My
first character, as I already said, it was a night elf. I originally started with Alliance. I ended up with the Horde. It was a male night elf. I called him Venom, I think. I wasn't really creative with the names back then. Eventually, as I said, that character, I was kind of left in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know what to do, so I kind of got bogged down not knowing what to do, and I was getting killed in zones that I shouldn't have been in. So what I did was I wanted a fresh start. So I went to a new server. The initial server was Scarshield Legion on the EU side. After that, I joined the Shatar server and I created a hunter, and that was my main up until about Legion. During Legion, I decided to create a Demon Hunter, just because the class seemed interesting and fun and different, so I said I'd give it a go.
So yeah, Manaroth. And the first character I ever made was a human warrior. And my name was Novalife, which was actually a person that played RuneScape. I just ripped off their name completely. And I only got that to level 7, and then I switched to Gnome. And then my name was Wrecker, with 2 Ks. It was a big mistake, making a Gnome. That's what I played like up until past level 70, or past level 80 actually, so that was my main character for like 3 expansions, that same character. The old community, just to talk about it a little bit, is nothing like the new community. Like, so many things that made it so good got gutted. Stuff that made it so good was, you know, I just talked about making that gnome for the first time. And, you know, you have this character from low level to max level all the way through, and like the people that you meet along the way, and just, you sort of develop a reputation sort of on the server because you're the same character the entire time, and as you form groups and form relationships with people that you do so often because of how big the world is and how much there is to do. So I guess the big first thing is guilds, right? And that's sort of like the first introduction to like this sort of group of friends that you sort of develop. You didn't get the option to change your appearance and faction and all that sort of stuff. So once you made a character, like you stuck that all the way through, and not many people made new characters because it took so long, right? You made this character, you formed a guild, and as you're leveling, you do all these things with these people that you haven't talked to in real life, but you start to develop these friendships that are stronger than some of the friendships that you have in real life, right? Because of all the amount of time that you spend with these people. I guess another part of the community thing too that not many people speak about is the Horde and Alliance thing, and how it was like if you made a character on a PvP server, most zones that you're in are contested, right? So like there's sort of a community between the two factions. You know, you can't communicate, but you know, you can see them and like sort of try to talk to them and stuff, or get ganked by them, and it sort of creates this whole other dynamic that just doesn't exist in other games. You know, it's like always you're always kind of worried that something's gonna happen, and you don't know how they're gonna react once you do sort of see them. And yeah, that's another thing. And then you talk to people on the forums and sort of communicate between the two factions.
There was no like dungeon finder, there was no raids, there was no teleports. The only teleports you could do was did the mages have the teleports back then? I can't even remember. But you had the summoning stones.
One thing big back in the day was the Crossroads. Yeah, so the Crossroads is this place just south of Orgrimmar, right? And this is sort of when there was these big Alliance versus Horde wars, that would sort of be the main area where it would all begin, and it would start off with just a few people, and then like 5 minutes later everybody would begin the warning saying this is under attack, and more people would show up, and eventually it was just crazy. You'd get this whole like 40 versus 40 people in this small little area in the middle of a desert, and that stuff was just so cool, and that stuff doesn't really happen in the game anymore, right? The whole Alliance versus Horde thing, I feel like, is kind of lost with the whole... They do server sharding now, you know what that is, right? So like, you don't always see the same people, but back in the day, you only saw the people that were on your server, so every day you would go and level the same people. You'd see the same people and over, because it took so long to level where you just couldn't, you know, pass someone by so many levels.
For me, that kind of killed a lot of the community, because when you're grouping with people, you're not necessarily meeting the same people. These aren't people just from your server. Like before, back in the day, when you picked your server, that was your home. You were picking your home because this is where you were going to be. And now there's always people around. You could group up with someone or see someone and you might never see them ever again because of the phasing, the zone phasing. You had to find people to do this. So you go into like trade chat or general chat, wherever you were, and just put up a thing saying you were looking for people for a group, and you had to like get these people, and then you had to travel to the dungeon, and the first two people there, then you probably nominate two people, whoever was the closest, they would go there and then summon the rest of the people.
You see these people leveling up, and then you see them at max level, and like, it's just like a community like nothing else, you know? It's just, it's so hard to explain, but like, you start to develop these reputations. I can still name people from my server from way back in the day, and like who they were and what they were like and their names, and I guarantee everybody else on my server could name them too. I actually had a time where when I started playing the game again and I went back to Manoroth and had a character on that, and I started talking to someone. I mean, he was on that server for a long time too, and then he knew who I was, my old character name. Yeah, it's probably not a good thing, but...
I used to love the difficulty as well back in Vanilla, and Burning Crusade as well. One of the things I love about the old World of Warcraft is the questing. The questing now, you get a quest, it instantly tells you what you need to do. It doesn't tell you where to go. You have to read and try and figure it out, and there's no markers or anything on the map. I used to like that. It was a lot more interesting, I feel like. It was a lot more involved, and you weren't just like instantly shown where to go. Sometimes it could have been a little bit frustrating every now and again, but I felt like that was part of the game. And even like some of the quests, the classes, I feel like the difficulty was brought way down because it made some of the classes special with the way you acquired some of your abilities. Like with the Warlock, to get the Voidwalker, you had to travel the whole way across the map and do a special quest line for it.
Yeah, so a big thing about the community was leveling, because it took so long, and when, you know, the original game was the only, you know, I guess expansion that was out at the time, that's all there was, so leveling was a big part of that, and it took so long, and for each specific class you had these sort of unique quest lines that you got to go on at like level 30, level 40, and so on. So, you know, each level that you got was so much more significant than it is nowadays. And, you know, like the big levels getting to level 30, for example, a Warlock, and I think Warlocks and Rogues and Warriors, I know, all had really big things, and Shamans had to get their totems. And, you know, that's just other parts of the game that just don't exist in the game nowadays.
Those little extra things that you had to get for classes, for specific abilities and stuff, because it felt like you earned it, you know, and it made that class a little bit special. And it stuck in my head, like going to get the Void Walker when I was the Warlock. It stuck in my brain, and it was it's one of the main quests that still stick out to me because it was just so cool. It was interesting and different, and they kind of took that all away now and made it easier. I understand why they did it. Obviously, they have to adapt and change as they progress, but I still feel like they should have left some of that stuff in.
When you needed to do something, say for a quest or do an instance, you had to do everything on your own. You had to read the quest log. They weren't telling you where to go. There was no like magic circle that you had to walk to finish the quest, and then just doing the quest to begin with was much more difficult, right? All the things were way much harder to kill. After each kill, you had to eat, you had to drink to get mana and all that sort of stuff, or you had to find someone to do it with you, which was a big thing that happened all the time. Every time you leveled, there was quests that were so hard that you actually had to get someone to help you, and that was a big thing with the community. That just doesn't really happen anymore. What made it so much better back when it was hard, because it took so long to level, each piece of gear that you got, you had that piece of gear for longer. So it had sort of more sentimental value to you, and it was more valuable all around. If you get a new piece of gear now, you might be wearing that piece of gear for 20 levels because you're leveling so much faster than the gear that you're acquiring. But back in the day, you got this piece of gear at max level, let's say, when you raided and you got a piece of gear. It was, you know, it was almost iconic. You would see people in this gear. This was before transmog, so you would see the exact gear that they had, and when you saw them like with the, you know, the new raiding gear that they had, the new weapons and all that sort of stuff, it was just iconic. You would see a weapon, but when you see a weapon now, there's just no, you know, you don't get excited about seeing people's gear. I remember back before I was level 60 and inspecting level 60s before I was max, and you know, seeing the gear that they had from Molten Core and Blackwing Lair and all that sort of stuff, and everything was just so unique. And you know, with the new game, that's sort of lost, I think. Guilds were very important back in the day. Like, they still are important, obviously, but back in the day they were much more important because a lot of what you had to do back in the day when you did instances or quests or any sort of thing like that, bought something, a lot of that was done through trade chat or any chat. So having a guild and having people to talk to immediately was just another chat of people that you could communicate with to try to do something. You know, a big thing would be if you're going to do a 5-man dungeon. Back in the day, you'd be going in trade chat asking for people, but you know, first off, you could ask your guild, right?
Guilds now, you have people joining up specifically for perks and stuff. Like, you have perk guilds, you have social guilds, you have raid guilds, still PvP guilds. But now a lot of the guilds, people just join just to get the perks and stuff because it's kind of required now. Because if you don't, you're missing out. You're missing out on a lot of bonuses that other people are going to get. Now you still have people doing solo, obviously, but I feel like guilds were a lot more social back in the day. They were a lot more like family feeling. Obviously, you'd have your hardcore raiding guilds and stuff, but a lot of the guilds, it just felt like they were more personal, you know? I still talk to people that I met in World of Warcraft in guilds years ago. I still have them add on Facebook. I talk to some of them daily.
Every guild that I was a part of, you know, while like the main core group was there, did feel like a family. You know, you got on each week, you did your raid or whatever with the guild, and you know, you would talk to these people day in, day out. A lot of them would help you do stuff, like give you things. Like, there's not many games out there where people that you've never met before in your life are giving you things for free and helping you. But in WoW, that was something that was commonplace. I felt like scamming wasn't often in WoW. Like, the community was just, it was so good. Like, it's hard to explain, I don't know.
Especially with the no looking for group function or looking for raid, it made guilds way more important, especially for that aspect, and PvP, as I said already, but especially for raiding. Trying to get 40 random people, trying to get 40 pugs for a raid would have been near impossible.
The big thing I think with guilds is Raiden, of course. Like, there's just no other game that I played where like 5 o'clock every day everybody would log on. You would have like 30 something people on ready to go, and each week you would do this 4 times a week, and like I don't know, it was just so fucking cool. Raiden is pretty much the main thing in the game, I think, for a lot of people. And you know, back during BC and vanilla, you know, a lot of the hard thing about Raiden was getting enough people to do it and people having good enough computers to actually run the raid. And I didn't really start Raiden until NBC because that's the first time that I was max level. And I did start Raiden pretty hardcore, but so there's really nothing else like hardcore Raiden in WoW, I don't think. You know, getting a massive group of people together to do this thing over and over again until you kill something is just, it's kind of crazy actually. Hardcore Raiden back in the day, you know, you have this group of friends that 4 times a week you get together and you do this raid together. And you know, when it's something that you haven't killed yet and you're working towards it, no matter how long it takes, you know, you die 50 times or something on one boss and you're still pushing through with this massive group of people to get this done. It's just it's a crazy experience. And talking a bit about the gear again, you know, each piece of gear that dropped, it was like that boss just dropped 3 pieces of gear, but now it's personal loot. So when you're, you know, fighting bosses that you haven't killed yet and you're looking at what can drop off of it, something that you really need, and you're pushing towards killing this thing, and then you finally get it, like there's just no other feeling like that. Killing something that you've been spending so much time on, and then, you know, seeing the loot that it drops, and like these are pieces that, you know, people inspect you and they, oh, you killed this, you did that. Like, so it wasn't just about getting the kill itself, it was about everything after the kill. That's something that's missed, yeah, like especially big bosses like Anixia too, that drops so much more stuff than just gear. Like, you loot it and then there's 4 pages and you're clicking the down arrow to get to all the gear. It was just so cool, and it's all epic too. Like, if you just looted a random mob and you saw something purple, like you'd be like, holy crap. But when you kill something like Anixia and there's just 4 pages of, you know, purple gear all the way down, it was so cool. So that's another thing, back to like the trust, which is a huge thing back in the day. If you did like a pug group or whatever with, you know, people that you don't really know, and you trust this one guy to give you the gear that you deserve or you won or whatever, like a lot of the times that doesn't end up working out for you. And that's happened to me like 3 times in the game early on, where I lost, you know, like the main 2-hand weapon that you need, like the best one or whatever. Yeah, so there's spots in the game that are sort of hidden, right, from the player base, but if you can find your way there, I remember there was this sort of buggy area in Orgrimmar that you get underneath the map, and then if you come up this certain way, you come up that big pillar with the big rock on it. If you come up underneath that and go inside of it, it's actually a tomb that has a guy's signature on it, like the guy that obviously designed that area. And you know, it's kind of cool just to see that little mark of somebody that's been left there, right, of all the developers and that sort of thing.
There was a lot of fun bugs, like bugs where you could get underneath areas, like some of the stuff they made or some of the original designs for say cities and maps and stuff in the game. Some of them, they didn't even delete the code, they just buried it. So like Ironforge, you could get under Ironforge into old Ironforge.
I guess another one would be in Ironforge, there was this spot sort of near the middle where if 2 people stood in this exact spot, you could duel each other. So there was this dueling arena sort of in the middle of Ironforge, which I thought was super cool.
I remember you could get under Stormwind at one point. I'm not even sure if you can do that anymore, but there was a lot of cool little stuff left over in that. I think a lot of them are patched out now.
Yeah, there was a lot of spots where you weren't supposed to be able to get to, but you could, you know, if you worked at it hard enough. I think at the old Stormwind auction house, there was a big spot that you could get up on top of.
One of my favorite aspects of vanilla that's gone now, it's only a small thing as well, but it's when, back in the day when you used to raid, obviously there was no personal loot, but I used to love going to a raid and everyone gets your rolls, like you get the master looter and stuff, and I used to love defeating a boss, going over to the corpse, right clicking it and seeing the items there and clicking through the pages to see if your item was there. And then if your item was there, you're like, oh my god, it's there. And then you actually have to roll and see if you can get it through the rolls. You still, like, even if it's there, you still don't get it. It can get frustrating when you consistently don't get your item or when you keep missing it. But I just used to love. I used to love the surprise. I used to love the not knowing if you're going to get it. Whereas with the personal loot, it's kind of, a lot of that is gone. Even the master loot thing is kind of gone now. It was a cool little aspect of the game that I miss.
Yeah, my favorite part about the old game or vanilla was the levels of difficulty for the raids. Now with only one, or back in the day when there was only one level of difficulty, you know, when you got in there and you got gear from it, that was the only piece of gear that you could get that had that model. But now if you do a mythic raid and you get this two-hand weapon, there's someone, you know, that gets it from LFR, the exact same model. So like the gear that you got back in the day was much more unique and valuable. And now it's, you know, the game is just overrun with good gear. Just oversaturated with good gear. Later on when I played WoW, it was mainly for PvP. And there's really no other game I think that has the PvP like arena, just like how intense it is. But World PvP specifically is sort of gone from the game nowadays too. But back in the day, you know, each zone was a contested territory, so you could fight each other if you were on a PvP server.
I was never big into PvP. I did a little bit in my early World of Warcraft days. I never really did arena. I used to mainly do World PvP. My first server that I was on was a PvPvE server, so I got a little bit of World PvP back in vanilla.
It would happen all the time because most people were leveling the game. Most people weren't max level. So these lower level areas were overrun with people with Horde and Alliance. So it would always happen where you'd be leveling or whatever and you tried to level, and then next thing you know, your quest helper or whatever, or your quest giver is getting killed, right?
And I did a few war fronts as well, but that was pretty much it. I didn't go majorly into the PvP. I PvP'd up until Wrath of the Lich King, and then I stopped after that.
Yeah, anything to do with PvP or anything like that out in the world is kind of gone because of the server sharding. And, you know, I think actually that's probably one of the worst changes they made in terms of affecting the community. It took away the community completely. Like, yeah, you're still seeing people and other people in your area, but, you know, if those aren't the people that you see all the time, then, you know, they're not important. It's like being in a big city, like walking by hundreds of people on the side of the street, like you don't care about any of them. But if you live in a small town and you see this same person over and over again, like you develop a relationship with that person, right? Even if you don't talk to them. It's just a matter of seeing them over and over, like their name. You couldn't change your name. You couldn't change your race. You couldn't change all that sort of stuff.
Burning Crusade was an incredible expansion. I felt like that could have went wrong in so many ways because it was their first expansion, you know. So I said there was a lot of pressure on them to get everything, to nail everything right.
You know, it was obviously something entirely new because it was the first expansion that came out. I was a max level when it came out, but to see it from a lower level kind of gave me this different view of it, I think, because I wasn't there at the Dark Portal. I wasn't there at that whole clash in between the two factions together at the portal and, you know, fighting their way to get in it, basically. But to speak about what it was actually like, it was the first time in the game sort of where, you know, you had high level characters sort of start in this new starting area again, because before, if you were Horde, you started in a different spot than if you started as Alliance. So it was the first time where these high level characters were all in one area battling through this entirely new zone. And it was the first time where they had a city that was peaceful, I think. So with BC, it brought sort of a new area where Horde and Alliance could be in the same spot but be friendly to each other, which is kind of interesting.
And it was the introduction of flying mounts and new zones. And I feel like the zones that they introduced were really, really cool because they were all very, very different from each other. And even collectively, they were very, very different from Azeroth, from what we already have seen. Like you drop into, first of all, going through the Dark Portal for the first time was just incredible. Not knowing what you're going to get on the other side, and then you get out and you see Hellfire Peninsula, and you're there and everything is red and it's like hell basically, and you're walking along in the Fell Reaver. The first time you see the Fell Reaver, you just hear there's like everything is shaking, and then the Fell Reaver, you turn around and it's just standing there, and like you try to fight it or something, it just demolishes you. It's so cool. Going in there for the first time is just incredible, and all the zones in there were great.
Yeah, so one thing that changed the community a lot in BC was the introduction of flying mounts. Not at the start, not a lot of people had them because there was so much money to get or so much gold to get, but soon as more and more people got them, it kind of took away a little bit of the community because, people would be flying in the air. You never saw people on the ground. They wouldn't be taking flight paths. They're traveling between zones in ways that you never could before because, you can just fly over a mountain instead of taking a mountain pass where, you'd run into people. So I think flying mounts were one of the things that took a lot of the community away, actually. Especially for world PvP, like, how are you gonna kill people, that don't want to be killed, I guess, if they're flying high above you in a mount? Like, it kind of killed world PvP. Absolutely, I'm excited for Classic, I think a lot of people are going to be very surprised. Well, I guess there's been the beta, so maybe not, but people that haven't played the game before, maybe. You're going to really start to realize how easy the game is now compared to what it was when people started playing Classic, because, you were on your own in that game, unless you got a group, but, things weren't easy to do in that game. Just waiting to level 40 to get your first mount was a huge achievement. Yeah, once you got to level 40, you probably didn't even have enough gold to buy it. So, even once you got there, it didn't even matter.
I think there is absolutely going to be an upgrade to Burning Crusade eventually with Classic. I don't feel like they're going to stop with Classic, because Classic is going to run out. It's going to run out eventually. They're not making new content. Obviously, I think they announced that they're going to release it kind of the way they did when it launched. Eventually, people are going to stop playing because there's no more content going to come out.
What I'm most excited about for Classic is definitely the sense of community again. There's no looking for group, there's no quest helper, there's nothing that's going to help you. So to get help, you need to talk to other people, and then the people that you're playing with and talking to are the same people that are on your server. So they're always going to be there. But yeah, I just think going through the whole game again, with the whole how it was leveling, it was just so cool. It wasn't just about getting to max level, it was about the journey that you took to get to max level. And you really get to experience each zone for what it is, right? Because you get to do all the quests in there basically because you have to. Whereas now, you go to a zone and you do a few quests and then you out-leveled it. So you really get to experience the entire world. I
feel like they should do BC, bring BC out for a few years, do Wrath and stop at Wrath. Because Wrath, in my opinion, was the peak.
I think absolutely they should just run it back. I think the trajectory for what WoW was like was, vanilla was really good at the time, BC was very good, and then I think Wrath of the Lich King is really where WoW hit its peak. So I think for Classic, what they should do is release Burning Crusade. Eventually people are going to get bored. They should release it just how they did normally as before.
It was the start of, say, the user friendliness that came in later on, like the quest markers and stuff. But I just loved Wrath of the Lich King. It was a great zones, great quests. You had the Lich King storyline kick in and end.
Run that whole expansion through. Those raids were amazing. All those raids were super good in Burning Crusade, and then they should do the same thing with Wrath of the Lich King, because I think that entire expansion was amazing. Ulduar, I think, was one of the most unique and best raids they've ever made. And then I think after ICC, I think they should cap the game. So I think that's when it was the best.
ICC, Nax, it was an incredible expansion, and Burning Crusade as well. But I want them to do that. You could comfortably stop at Rat. You could stop at Rat of the Lich King and have everybody be happy, and then just rinse and repeat, just do it again. I mean, what else are they gonna do, you know? Best raid ever? I would probably go Uldor. Uldor was an incredibly well-made raid. If we're talking vanilla and BC, I'd probably pick Karazhan. I really enjoyed Karazhan. It was the first raid that properly wowed me. There was just a lot of fun elements to it as well, like the chess game and stuff. Yeah.
I gotta say Black Temple in BC, just because when I was in it, like, it was still very difficult at the time. And I remember just Reliquary of Souls and Blood Boil, these two bosses that our guild wiped for like nights on this boss, both these bosses, you know, and to eventually kill him was just, you know, it was just an experience that you can never really describe, you know.